It was the morning after Thanksgiving in Warner Robins, Georgia, November 24th, 2023. The quiet suburban street of Wake Forest Drive was still draped in the calm of the holiday weekend. But at 9:10 a.m., that peace shattered with a 911 call. The caller, a 57-year-old man named Brian McManus, reported that his wife, 63-year-old Miss Ann McManus, had taken her own life. His voice was steady, unnervingly calm, as he described finding her dead from what he called an obvious self-inflicted gunshot wound. But when police arrived, the story fell apart instantly. There was no gun, no shell casings, no sign of suicide. What they found instead was horror. Miss Ann's body brutally beaten, her head injuries so severe they spoke of rage, not despair. Within minutes, detectives knew this wasn't suicide. It was murder, and the man who reported it was about to become their prime suspect. Miss Ann was beloved in her community. Neighbors called her Miss Ann with affection, a kind, nurturing woman who radiated warmth. She had lived a full life, raising children and grandchildren, and now sharing her home with her granddaughter Jessica Terrell and 2 great-grandchildren. Her garden was always neat, her front porch always welcoming. At 63, she was still vibrant and full of love to give. Widowed for several years, she missed companionship but remained hopeful. Her family said she was trusting, sometimes too trusting. She believed in the good in people. That unshakable faith would eventually lead her to the man who would destroy her life. 2022, Miss Ann joined Tinder seeking companionship and met Brian McManus, a 55-year-old who claimed to be a retired London police officer. Charming and confident, he spoke of integrity and service. But his past told another story. Fired for harassment, Brian was a manipulator hiding behind a false image. Brian saw in Miss Ann what predators seek: kindness, loneliness, and trust. He promised love, a new life in America, and a shared future. Within 3 months, he proposed. 2022, they were married, living together on Wake Forest Drive. At first, things seemed perfect, but soon cracks appeared. Friends noticed Brian's real goal was a green card. Once his immigration process began, his affection vanished. He grew distant, controlling, and often disappeared on business trips to Florida, where he was secretly seeing his married mistress, another woman caught in his web of lies and manipulation. Brian lived a double life for months. He played the part of loving husband at home while carrying on his affair in another state. Prosecutors would later describe him as a pathological liar and a narcissist who viewed women as disposable tools for his own gain. His behavior grew increasingly erratic, and Miss Ann's family noticed. Jessica Terrell recalled that he avoided family gatherings and often withdrew when people tried to talk to him. He seemed uncomfortable around them, as if he were hiding something. Then came the mistake that exposed everything. November 2023, Brian accidentally sent Miss Ann a romantic text meant for his mistress. The message was unmistakably intimate. It shattered Miss Ann's world. The man she had trusted, the man she had built a life with, was betraying her in the most personal way. Furious and heartbroken, she confronted him. The confrontation turned heated. Miss Ann told him she knew about the affair and was going to report their marriage to immigration authorities, exposing it as a sham. That threat was Brian's breaking point. If she went to the authorities, he would lose everything: his green card, his American life, and his freedom. Instead of facing the truth, he decided to silence her forever. The day after Thanksgiving, around 8:30 a.m., Brian walked his dog, taking an unusual route toward a drainage ditch. By 9 o'clock, he was home, calmly calling 911 to report his wife dead. Detectives found his demeanor emotionless and rehearsed. Inside, Miss Ann lay naked and covered in blood, brutally beaten and strangled. Brian claimed she'd shot herself, yet there was no gun or bullet wound, only evidence of a violent attack. Scratches on his arms deepened suspicion, and forensic evidence confirmed the scene was no suicide, but a calculated and savage killing. Detectives began building their case. Security footage from nearby homes soon provided the missing link. The cameras showed Brian leaving the house with the dog at 8:45 a.m., walking to the drainage ditch, tossing objects into the water, and returning home. Less than half an hour later, he made the 911 call. When investigators searched the ditch, they found two key pieces of evidence: a rubber mallet covered in blood and a damaged cell phone. The mallet matched Miss Ann's wounds perfectly. It was the murder weapon. The autopsy confirmed that Miss Ann had died from blunt force trauma and strangulation. She had fought desperately, and DNA from beneath her fingernails matched Brian's blood. Those scratch marks he couldn't explain were proof of her final struggle. Cell phone records revealed his trips to Florida had nothing to do with business. They coincided exactly with visits to his mistress, and text messages showed Miss Ann had recently discovered the affair and threatened to report him. The motive was clear. When confronted with evidence, Brian began to unravel. His first defense was to blame others. He accused Jessica Terrell and her boyfriend of killing Miss Ann, a cruel and desperate lie that only deepened the family's pain. But FBI cell data proved they were miles away during the murder. When that failed, he spun another story, claiming intruders had broken in and killed her. Yet there were no signs of forced entry, nothing stolen, and no unknown footprints or fingerprints. Surveillance footage made one thing undeniable: no one entered or left the home except Brian and Miss Ann. The investigation was airtight. Detectives concluded that Brian attacked Miss Ann after she confronted him about his affair and immigration fraud. He waited until she was alone, ambushed her with the rubber mallet, then strangled her when she fought back. Afterward, he cleaned up, took the weapon and phone to the ditch, and calmly staged a fake suicide call. November 25th, 2023, less than a day after the murder, Brian McManus was arrested and charged with malice murder. His trial began on July 7th, 2025, in Houston County Superior Court. Over 6 days, jurors heard from detectives, forensic experts, and Miss Ann's family. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: the DNA under Miss Ann's nails, the security footage, and Brian's history of manipulation and violence toward women. Brian sat stone-faced through it all, showing no remorse. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict: guilty on all counts. On July 16, 2025, Judge Edward Lukemere sentenced Brian McManus to life in prison without parole, telling him bluntly, "You basically bashed in the skull of another human being." In court, Miss Ann's granddaughter, Jessica Terrell, wept as she spoke. She said she would never forgive herself for missing Thanksgiving dinner with her grandmother the night before the murder. Another granddaughter called Miss Ann, "my beautiful, kind, and loving Mim, who was ripped from us by a selfish, cold-blooded monster." District Attorney Eric Edwards called Brian a sociopath who views women as disposable. Miss Ann believed in love and kindness, but her trust was betrayed by the man she welcomed into her home. Her story is a heartbreaking reminder of how charm can hide danger and why we must protect the vulnerable. Brian may spend life behind bars, but Miss Ann's light lives on through her kindness and strength. If you believe her story deserves to be remembered, like this video, subscribe and turn on the bell to keep more true stories like hers alive.